when 45-year-old Jennifer Lynn Rossi's elementary school-aged son came home upset one day in early 2024 because a classmate had stolen his sports drink. She decided to get payback. The next morning, she sent her son to his Bexar County, Texas school with a drink she had concocted and told him to give it to his classmate. When the unsuspecting student took a swig of the beverage during gym class, he was immediately repulsed by the taste. He spat the drink out but came down with a headache, raising the concerns of school staff members. Several other students also sampled the drink and felt unwell afterward. Rossi admitted to making the beverage, which was a mix of Gatorade, lemon, salt, and vinegar. She claimed she was a nurse and that she knew the drink was not harmful, but the student who was targeted in the prank required medical monitoring before receiving a clean bill of health. Rossi took full responsibility for her actions and was charged with 1 felony count of injury to a child. Number 22. Mary Vega and Johnston Cox. A New Britain, Connecticut high school suddenly went into lockdown on an otherwise ordinary morning in October of 2016 when a man in a clown mask was seen riding as a passenger in a car as it drove through the campus. Music was blaring and the driver was laying on the horn, which made the sight even more alarming. People were especially scared because the incident occurred amid a bizarre spate of clown sightings throughout the United States. The lockdown lasted for about an hour and officers remained stationed outside the school for the rest of the day. Police also searched for the car, but the suspects ended up turning themselves in. 35-year-old Mary Vega and 39-year-old Johnston Cox were each charged with second-degree breach of peace, and city officials announced an upcoming meeting to discuss the so-called clown problem. The suspects were held on $10,000 bond, but it's unclear what happened with their cases moving forward. In the meantime, the clown sightings eventually dissipated, bringing a much-welcomed end to the unusual trend. Number 21. Susan Alexandria Tinker. On the morning of April Fool's Day in 2013, 20-year-old Waffle House employee Susan Alexandria Tinker called 911 from her workplace in Hampton, Virginia, and falsely reported a robbery. Responding officers arrived shortly after 6 a.m. and began interviewing suspects and canvassing the area. Surveillance footage confirmed that no robbery had occurred, and the police discovered additional evidence indicating that they had been pranked. Unamused by the prank, officers arrested Tinker on a misdemeanor charge of falsely summoning police. A law enforcement spokesperson told NBC News that the authorities take phony 911 calls very, very seriously. If convicted as charged, Tinker could have faced up to a year in jail and a fine of up to $2,500, but the story quickly went quiet in the news, leaving the outcome of the case and the status of Tinker's employment at the Waffle House unclear. Number 20. Charles Ross. In April of 2019, a Florida man in a cop outfit approached a woman and her 2 children in a Sarasota parking lot where he attempted to cite her for false traffic violations. Later identified as 25-year-old Charles Ross, he was not a police officer and the woman did not fall for the act. When Ross first approached and told the victim that he was ticketing her, she thought that she had accidentally parked in a handicapped spot. But she quickly realized that this wasn't the case and became scared for her safety. She started talking loudly, capturing a bystander's attention, and the Good Samaritan told the victim that she would call 911. Ross went to his vehicle before reapproaching the woman and continuing to harass her, according to law enforcement. It gave the victim a chance to snap a photo of his license plate before he drove away, and police quickly identified Ross as the suspect. During his conversation with deputies, Ross admitted that the incident was a prank and that he was going to offer the woman concert tickets. He's a YouTuber who's known to engage in these kinds of antics, and this wasn't the first time he had fallen under police scrutiny for his activities. In Manatee County, Ross had taken down stop signs at an intersection which poses an obvious hazard to drivers. He had also previously been charged with misdemeanor battery for giving wedgies to strangers. Following the police impersonation incident, Sarasota Sheriff Tom Knight said he was fed up with the influencer's antics. Speaking to Fox 13, Knight said, "Your adolescent behavior is getting old. It's tying up our resources. It's costing money." Ross was arrested on a felony charge of impersonating an officer and was released on a $10,000 bond after going before a judge. In November of 2019, he pleaded guilty to unlawful use of a badge, a first-degree misdemeanor. He was sentenced to 6 months of probation, which was along the lines of similar punishments he had received for past crimes. More recently, in May of 2024, Ross was found guilty of trespassing at a location in Sarasota where he had been asked to leave several times while filming a video. He was sentenced to a year of probation and is no longer under supervision after successfully completing his requirements. Number 19. Hazel Hamrick. 29-year-old Hazel Hamrick first made news headlines during the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic in April of 2020, when she and her partner, 47-year-old Ernest Williams, were arrested for causing a disturbance at a Walmart store in Newton, Kansas. The pair were accused of coughing on people and talking about having the coronavirus, even though neither of them was sick. Hamrick was charged with 2 felony counts of criminal threat, while Williams faced charges of aiding and abetting a criminal threat. Both suspects were charged with misdemeanor disorderly conduct. Following her arrest, Hamrick told the Wichita Eagle that she hadn't stopped to think about whether her actions might scare customers. She said she felt like a complete fool, but that she couldn't go back in time, leaving her with no choice but to see her case through. As remorseful as Hamrick seemed, her disruptive public behavior landed her back in hot water with the law just a month later, when she was arrested at a gas station for squatting inside of a large cooler. The incident captured law enforcement's attention after a photo of the incident began circulating on social media. There was no evidence that Hamrick had relieved herself in the cooler, but employees threw all the ice away as a precaution. Police arrested Hamrick for contaminating water or food, and she was subsequently charged with felony criminal threat and misdemeanor property damage. The outcomes of her and Williams' cases are unclear. Number 18. Greenbrier superglue prank. As graduation approached, during the spring of 2012, 4 young women decided to get one last laugh by supergluing 43 exterior locks at Greenbrier High School in Columbia County, Georgia. They caused more than $5,000 in damages, and school officials promptly suspended senior privileges while investigators worked to identify the suspects. A reward was offered for tips leading to the culprits, and witnesses soon came forward with valuable information. Suspects Brooklyn Bella, Denisha Clemens, Kristen Tanhill, and Elizabeth Metz were all charged with felony-level criminal damage to property. They were released from jail after each posting a $2,600 bond, but were all suspended from school for the remainder of the year with the exception of exams. The 4 teens also lost any exam exemptions they had earned through good grades and attendance, and were banned from participating in their graduation ceremony. Additionally, school officials banned them from receiving their diplomas until they had repaid the $5,100 repair bill for the damages they had caused. Number 17. Heygoten. Like many popular YouTubers, the man who runs the Heygoten channel makes videos of himself pranking people in public. Some of his most popular pranks involve handing inappropriate notes to random strangers and handing people pictures of himself after asking them to take his photo. Also, like many people in his line of entertainment, Heygoten is no stranger to run-ins with the law. On one occasion, he was detained at a Legoland park after a woman accused him of attacking her and allegedly hit him with her purse. Heygoten was handcuffed while police investigated the situation, but was ultimately released without being arrested. He was less lucky during the more recent filming of a prank at a shopping mall when he handed inappropriate notes to strangers. Some people laughed as they read their notes, which included messages offering favors in the bathroom and making other propositions. Others politely declined what was being offered in the note, tried to give the note back, or simply carried on with their day without much of a reaction. At some point, someone became annoyed enough by the prank to confront Heygoten and his friend, who were asked to stop filming inside the store. An employee could be heard saying that they had dealt with Heygoten in the past, while the YouTuber insisted he wasn't doing anything wrong. He continued to hand notes to people as he made his way toward the store's exit. Police arrived while the 2 men were walking through the parking lot and informed them that they were being trespassed from the store. It would have normally been a quick process, but officers suddenly placed Heygoten under arrest, telling him that they discovered an arrest warrant while running his name. They said the warrant was for a disorderly conduct charge out of another county, but were unable to provide more specific details. In a video of the arrest posted to his YouTube channel, Heygoten encouraged viewers to hit the like button so he could afford his legal fees. Number 16. Ethan Lyman. Late one night in June of 2021, police responded to a fight at the I Promise School in Akron, Ohio, where they found 17-year-old Ethan Lyman lying in the parking lot with a major head wound. Life-saving efforts proved futile, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Lyman and 3 others had approached the basketball court with a water bead gun and sprayed it in the direction of 4 people who were in the midst of a game. The people playing basketball initially ran from Lyman and his friends, but then chased after the juveniles as they ran back toward the car they had arrived in. The ensuing confrontation between the 2 groups quickly escalated, resulting in the beating that took Lyman's life. Someone called 911 from the scene, but Lyman was the only person present when police arrived 3 minutes later. In a statement, Police Chief Stephen Milet acknowledged that the prank provoked the altercation that led to Lyman's death, but he maintained that the prank did not justify the use of deadly force. 20-year-old Deshaun Stafford, 19-year-old Tyler Stafford, and 21-year-old Donovan Jones were charged in connection with the case. The Stafford brothers claimed they acted in self-defense, and in September 2023, a jury acquitted them both of involuntary manslaughter while convicting them of lesser charges. Tyler Stafford received the maximum 6-month jail sentence for misdemeanor assault, and Deshaun was sentenced to 18 months in prison for felony aggravated assault. Donovan Jones pleaded no contest to 2 misdemeanor assault charges and received a 180-day suspended prison sentence, sparing him from any time behind bars. Number 15. Aaliyah Zarate. In December of 2023, a 6th grader named Aaliyah Zarate was accused of making a false fire alarm phone call from her middle school in Crosby, Texas. She denied the allegation, but the call was traced to her cell phone. Zarate claimed that someone else had taken her phone and made the call without her knowledge, but she was nevertheless led away in handcuffs and driven to a juvenile detention center. She was released without charges while the investigation continued and was left shaken by the incident. Zarate's parents claimed that they were unaware that their daughter had been fingerprinted, photographed, and booked into custody until after the fact. Aaliyah's father, Mark, criticized the authorities for what he described as their very, very unprofessional handling of the incident. A spokesperson for the Harris County Sheriff's Office told local news outlet KTRK that it's standard procedure to handcuff and arrest any suspects over the age of 10. This deeply bothered Zarate's mother, Vanessa, who argued that her daughter was just a child and posed no threat to anyone at any time. The disgruntled parent said that she had decided to come forward and share her story in hopes of preventing this type of situation from happening to another child. Number 14. Robert Farley. A New Jersey police chief was confronted with shocking allegations in March of 2025 when 5 officers sued North Bergen Township for on-the-job harassment. Court documents laid out a series of bizarre pranks and so-called humiliation rituals that were carried out by Chief Robert Farley, including standing over the desks of his subordinates and shaving his body hair. Farley was also accused of defecating in inappropriate places on several occasions, including on the floor outside the restroom and on the upper part of the toilet. According to the lawsuits, he shamelessly relieved himself right in front of staff members and began making them clean it up after he noticed the evening cleaning lady documenting evidence of his deliberately dirty deeds. Farley is also accused of exposing himself while making size-related comments to employees, spiking the office coffee pots with Viagra and ADHD medication, and microwaving a cup of hot sauce until the air in the building became unbearable, causing emergency personnel to respond to the scene. On one occasion, he allegedly snuck an extremely spicy ghost pepper onto a sandwich, causing the child who was eating it to become sick. One of the complainants, Detective Michael Derrin, claimed that he had been forced to do Farley's daughter's homework, with the chief even going so far as to threaten Derrin's job if the assignment received a bad grade. And when he wasn't pranking his employees, Farley was reportedly prone to fits of rage, which often ended with the destruction of staff members' property. The plaintiffs and their attorney are urging New Jersey's Attorney General to take action against Farley, while local officials allege that the complainants filed the complaints in retaliation for losing their overtime. Farley has also received support from the police union and many current and former officers, and continues to act as chief amid an ongoing investigation. Number 13. Connor Groom. 22-year-old Connor Groom and his co-workers were attending a workplace Christmas party at a top golf location in Essex, England in late 2023 when a friend playfully shoved him over a safety net. It was meant to be a harmless prank, but Groom plunged 12 feet to the driving range below, where he landed face first. He passed away about a month later from severe spinal and hypoxic brain injuries. Groom and his friends had been drinking heavily when several of the group members got into a light-hearted pushing match. They ignored staff members' warnings to stop messing around, and both Groom and a friend were pushed onto the net several times before Groom fell. The friend who pushed him was initially arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm, but the charge was dropped after the coroner ruled that Groom had died as a result of misadventure and that his friend had meant no harm. Number 12. Quimby Ghilotti. In 1997, a group of high school students from Napa, California, set out on their senior trip to Waterworld, USA with a specific goal in mind. They planned to try breaking their school's previous record of clogging as many people onto a water slide as possible. Knowing that the tradition was against the park's rules and that they could get kicked out for it, the teens waited until the end of the day. They learned the hard way that they had failed to consider the worst that could happen when the 40-foot Banzai pipeline slide collapsed under their weight. The pipeline was holding 3 times the amount of weight it was designed for when a 20-foot section of the slide split open, sending dozens of high schoolers plummeting onto the trees and ground below. Students could be seen clinging for dear life to the broken apparatus while others waited helplessly for rescue. Unable to move due to the severity of their injuries, 17-year-old Quimby Ghilotti died after being struck by a wooden pole, while around 30 survivors were left haunted by their memories of the tragic event. Number 11. Matthew Higgins.
Okay, so it's 1604, okay? You are further under arrest for murder. Okay, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention one question.
Murder?
Something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say
He
may
passed
give
away?
evidence. You understand?
Yeah, I understand he's dead.
So, murder.
So he's dead.
So,
Yes or no?
I'm not going any further into it, but at this current moment, you're under arrest for murder, okay?
After falling asleep during a heavy drinking session with friends in Cheshire, England, in September of 2024, 37-year-old David Eaton awoke to discover that his eyebrows had been shaved off. His friend, 36-year-old Matthew Higgins, tried blaming someone else. Eaton was furious when he learned that Higgins was responsible for the prank, leading to a fight between the two men. During the scuffle, Higgins retrieved a kitchen knife and stabbed Eaton twice in the heart. He then ran to a neighbor who called 911. Eaton died from his wounds despite emergency responders' efforts to revive him.
Come here a sec. At the moment, you're under arrest, alright? So we figure out what's going on. You're under arrest on suspicion of grievous bodily harm.
What about the dog?
We'll sort it, but you're secured at the moment.
Higgins initially claimed that Eaton had fallen onto the knife, but investigators concluded that he was lying, based on the noticeably deliberate nature of the victim's wounds. During his trial in early 2025, Higgins claimed that he had acted in self-defense. Unconvinced by his narrative, the jury found him guilty of murder and the judge sentenced him to life with a minimum of 18 years before becoming eligible for parole. Number 10. Joe Paduchowski. Officers working the graveyard shift in White Lake Township, Michigan, responded to a somewhat unusual call at 2 a.m. one morning in December 2023, when the alarm at a local tractor supply company store went off. As they pulled up to the scene, they saw 2 young men climbing down from the building's roof. One of the suspects was quickly apprehended after attempting to outrun law enforcement. His teenage friend, Joseph Paduchowski, fled into a wooded area and managed to elude police canines. Paduchowski was reported missing later that day after failing to return home, and officers found him dead in a small retention pond during an hours-long search. It's unclear what Paduchowski and his friend were doing at the tractor supply store, but the teen's father claimed that they had been partaking in a childish prank. Paduchowski had drowned after most likely ending up in the pond by accident during his efforts to evade law enforcement, and his death was ruled an accident. Number 9. Reginald Smalls. Texas teenager Dominic McCoy only meant to prank his friend Reginald Smalls on Labor Day morning in 2022. The young men were hanging out at Smalls' residence in Houston when McCoy hid in the bathroom with plans to jump out and scare Smalls, but Smalls was so startled by the surprise that he shot McCoy. Harris County deputies responded to the scene shortly after 8:30 a.m. and found McCoy clinging to life with a bullet wound in the home's bathroom. The team was rushed to the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries, and Small was charged with manslaughter, while second suspect, Ledrick Bowden, faced an evidence tampering charge for trying to hide the gun. Smalls had no criminal record prior to the shooting, but the prosecution argued for high bond due to the seriousness of the allegations he faced. Following his arrest, he was additionally charged with assaulting a public servant for allegedly hitting and throwing a detention officer to the ground when they tried to stop him from tampering with a jail cell camera. The judge ordered Smalls to wear an ankle monitor if he managed to post a $150,000 bond required in order to secure his freedom. But it's unclear what happened after that. He's not currently listed as being in state or county custody. Number 8. Rachel Buchanan. In October 2021, 18-year-old Rachel Olivia Buchanan and her boyfriend, Chris Shields Jr., walked to another couple's house in Henderson County, North Carolina, to hang out. After arriving, Buchanan realized that she had forgotten her phone charger. She and her friend walked back to her house to retrieve it, while their boyfriends grabbed their guns due to rumors of a panther lurking in the area. While Buchanan and her friend were away, they decided it would be funny to prank the men by making them think the panther was nearby, then pelting them with rotten eggs. When they returned, the two women hid outside the house, and the men heard what they thought was the sound of a panther growling and the twig snapping. Believing danger was nearby, the men fired multiple gunshots in the direction of the noise. They realized something terrible had happened when they heard Buchanan's friend screaming for help. Buchanan had been shot and she died while being rushed to the hospital. In May of 2022, District Attorney Andrew Murray released a statement clarifying that no one would face charges in connection with Buchanan's death. He noted that the men had the right to fire their weapons, adding, "Everyone involved in the loss of Miss Buchanan's life must forever live with their personal decision-making and actions on this ill-fated night." Number 7. Timothy Wilks. Shortly before 9:30 p.m. one Friday night in February of 2021, police were called to the Urban Air Trampoline and Adventure Park in Hickory, Tennessee parking lot, where they found 20-year-old YouTuber Timothy Wilks dead from a gunshot wound in the parking lot. Wilks had been filming a video of himself staging a prank robbery against an unsuspecting stranger who perceived the situation as a real threat to his life and the lives of his friend. 23-year-old David Starnes Jr. admitted to shooting Wilks, telling police that Wilks and his friend had approached his group with butcher knives. He said he had no idea that they were being pranked when Wilks lunged at them with the knife in hand. Shortly after the incident, a law enforcement spokesperson revealed that no arrests had been made, but that the investigation was ongoing. Wilks' grandmother, Shirley Berry, told local news outlet WKRN that she hoped others could learn from the ill-fated prank that resulted in the loss of her beloved grandson. She said she had only recently learned that Wilks was making YouTube videos, and she seemed surprised by it, describing her grandson as soft-spoken and almost always serious. Wanting to clear up any misconceptions about the situation, Berry made it clear that Wilks was not a thug. He worked at Walmart, was pursuing a career in HVAC, and was looking forward to his future. Believing that tragedies like this could be prevented, the devastated grandmother urged parents to be aware of what their children were doing. Number 6. Lane, Burch and Kaine, Villarreal. A viral TikTok prank went terribly wrong for two Texas teenagers in February of 2025 when they were arrested in Kyle for approaching children and asking them if they wanted to be kidnapped. 19-year-old Kaine Villarreal and 18-year-old Lane Burch were charged with terroristic threats for bothering the kids who were walking home from school when the suspects confronted them. Shaken by the incident, the children told their parents about what had happened. The parents contacted the police, who arrested Burch and Villarreal despite the teenagers' claims that the whole thing was a prank. Speaking with local reporters, a law enforcement spokesperson clarified that pranks that involve a threat or potential threat to other people or property are illegal. In a letter sent home with students, school officials praised the victims for their quick thinking and urged parents to talk to their kids about stranger danger. Number 5. Jacob Boone. When one of his 8th grade students at Columbia Central High School in Brooklyn, Michigan, missed several days of school in January of 2024, environmental science teacher Jacob Boone and the rest of his students created a mock memorial in the student's name. It was meant as a joke, but word of the service spread, leading many to believe that the student had really died. An equal number of people were outraged when they learned that they had fallen for a prank. School officials learned about the prank when another district called and offered to help grieving students. Boone attributed the incident to a lapse in judgment, but it would take more than an explanation to reconcile the mistake. The student's mother, Michelle Webb, wanted Boone to be fired from his job. Other parents expressed support for the teacher, who was extremely well liked among his students. The Board of Education was one vote short of what was necessary to terminate Boone, and he was suspended without pay for 6 weeks. He also entered a last chance agreement, which meant that any further misconduct would result in immediate termination. This was an unacceptable outcome to Webb, who was further outraged when Boone was promoted to head track coach a week after his return. Number 4. Janet Danahey. In February of 2002, 23-year-old Janet Danahey set fire to a futon on her ex-boyfriend's balcony as a Valentine's Day prank. The blaze quickly spread throughout the Greensboro, North Carolina apartment building, resulting in the deaths of sisters Donna and Rachel Llewellyn, who were 24 and 21 years old, their roommate, 20-year-old Beth Harris, and Donna Llewellyn's boyfriend, 25-year-old Ryan Beck. Instead of warning neighbors about the danger they were in, Danahey then walked home and asked her roommates to drive her to a dumpster where she disposed of her clothing in an attempt to destroy evidence. But she was nevertheless caught, and in July of 2002 she pleaded guilty to first-degree arson and 4 counts of murder in order to avoid the death penalty. Danahey was sentenced to life without parole, but the victims' families received a devastating surprise in 2022 when then-Governor Roy Cooper commuted her sentence. As a result, the convicted killer became eligible for parole, much to the relief of the victim's surviving loved ones. Danahey was denied parole after going before the board later that year. Her next hearing is scheduled for 2026. Number 3. O'Neill Joseph. A Valentine's Day prank ended in bloodshed for 24-year-old Yannick Cupido in 2021 when he was stabbed to death in the English town of Reading during a fight with a friend. The ordeal began the previous evening at the home of Cupido's friend, 23-year-old Reese Weatherburn. Cupido sent Weatherburn's ex-girlfriend text messages claiming that Weatherburn had stabbed someone and was in trouble. Taking the information at face value, the ex-girlfriend shared the information with Weatherburn's friend, O'Neill Joseph, who threatened to kill Cupido if anything had happened to Weatherburn. Prosecutors would later argue that when Joseph learned it was all a prank, he was so overcome with rage that he went out looking for Cupido, who was walking home when the two men crossed paths. Armed with the largest knife he could find in his kitchen, Joseph confronted Cupido, who was reportedly unapologetic about the hoax. As the altercation escalated, Joseph plunged the blade into Cupido's chest one time. Surveillance footage showed Cupido running a short distance before collapsing on the sidewalk. Joseph claimed that he had acted in self-defense, telling police that he was afraid Cupido would attack him with a glass bottle that he was holding. Police established that while Cupido did have a bottle in his hand, there was no evidence that it had been fashioned into a weapon, or that he intended to use it as such. Joseph was charged with murder, while Weatherburn faced charges for harboring the accused killer in the immediate aftermath of the crime and lying to the police during questioning. A jury found Joseph guilty of murder in November 2021, and he was sentenced to life with a minimum of 24 years. Weatherburn was convicted of 2 counts of assisting an offender and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Today's topic was requested by Chicky Abonita 909. Make the people think, and Amber Stamp. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Randy James Harris. During the summer of 2013, police in Jacksonville, Florida, arrested 5 male suspects for building and detonating bottle bombs outside multiple homes throughout the city's Dinsmore neighborhood, typically made with certain household chemicals and an empty soda bottle. The explosives are reportedly easy to put together, making them a popular choice among pranksters, but they're also incredibly dangerous to handle and can cause serious injury or even death. The bottle bombs were tossed in various yards over a several-day period. Witnesses reported seeing a boxy car fleeing the crime scenes, and it was no coincidence that an officer spotted a Scion XB driving nearby while responding to one of the explosions. While searching the vehicle during a traffic stop, police found several bottle bombs and ingredients for making the devices. All 5 suspects reportedly admitted to their involvement in the dangerous pranks and were arrested. 38-year-old Christopher Thomas Combs, 23-year-old Eric Joseph Mathis, 18-year-old Randy James Harris, and 2 unnamed teenagers were charged with making a destructive device, while Combs faced an additional charge of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Prosecutors dropped both charges against Thomas Combs later that year for reasons that are unclear, while Randy Harris entered and successfully completed a pre-trial diversion program. Records pertaining to the other defendants' cases were unavailable, but because no one was harmed in the explosions, it's unlikely that anyone involved faced harsh punishment. We have our release about when being nasty in public lined up right up after the final chapter, so stick around if you haven't seen that one yet. Number 1. Caledonia Senior Prank. During the spring of 2010, 5 high school seniors and 1 graduate from the previous year were arrested in Caledonia, Mississippi for a senior prank that had left school officials highly unamused. The group snuck into the school during the early morning hours, zip-tied the locker shut, and slathered the floor of the commons area with oil or soap, leaving staff with a highly inconvenient mess to deal with when they arrived to start the school day. As frustrating as the prank was, it didn't leave any lasting damage or cost any money to clean up. School officials nevertheless wanted the culprits held accountable, and the suspects were quickly identified. A few days after the incident, authorities announced the arrests of Cara Von Cannell, Sonny Rushin, Amber Hankins, Stephanie Hopper, and Kelsey Jones, who were all due to graduate later that month, as well as 19-year-old Patrick McIntyre, who had graduated the previous year. They were each charged with burglary of a commercial building, and the school district superintendent vowed that there would be disciplinary measures. A news update from later that month reported that the students had all satisfied the school district's demands for restitution, but they were still in legal trouble and were hoping their criminal charges would be reduced. In April of 2018, law enforcement in Oviedo, Florida, received reports that a woman was drunk behind the wheel of a red Mazda near Heygoten High School. The police found 20-year-old McCall LeDuc sitting on the curb next to her car, which was parked at a fire station. In her back seat, the police found a jar of marijuana, while a bottle of vodka was recovered from her front seat. LeDuc was at the time on probation for a DUI which had occurred the previous month. She was taken into custody for possession of marijuana and possession of alcohol by someone under 21 years old. After placing her in the back of the cruiser, Seminole County deputies checked on LeDuc after she'd slipped out of her handcuffs.
Upon doing so, the cops found that she'd spread her urine all over the rear of the vehicle. Her motivation beyond sheer inebriation remained unknown. Leduc received additional charges of alcohol-related reckless driving and resisting without violence, as well as health safety nuisance for the backseat urine incident. Number 6. Sean Edmondson and Tracy Bolton. On June the 8th of 2017, a man was recorded seemingly having intimate relations with a woman while on a Ryanair flight from Manchester to Ibiza. 31-year-old Sean Edmondson, who is described as a ladies' man by his friends, was on a trip to celebrate a bachelor party. Passengers Kieran Williams from Preston, Lancashire, later told a media outlet that he'd heard Edmondson flirting with a blonde woman. She was subsequently identified as 39-year-old Tracy Bolton, and she'd never met Edmondson prior to the flight. Williams overheard the intoxicated duo talking about having intercourse on the plane. Edmondson then loudly asked if anyone had a condom. Other passengers laughed along as they believed that the man was simply joking around. Roughly 10 minutes later, he and Bolton brought a lot of attention to themselves as they allegedly started having relations in full view of other flyers. 21-year-old Williams later told the media, "You could see the girl taking off her pants and he pulled his trousers off. She started riding him." Williams noted that he'd felt compelled to get his phone out and record them as he'd never before seen such a scene. The young man, who'd been flying to Ibiza to work as a bartender over the summer, reported that a female passenger who'd become trapped next to the love-making pair had asked to be moved. Williams also pointed out that the crew hadn't otherwise intervened to stop the romp. Williams's clip went viral and was also seen by 25-year-old Jenna Ross, Edmondson's pregnant fiancée, with whom he'd been in a relationship for roughly 6 years. In the aftermath, Bolton told a media outlet, "I am horrified, but absolutely nothing happened," adding that she hadn't stopped crying since seeing the clip online. The mother of 3 was adamant that they hadn't had intercourse and that she'd been challenged by Edmondson's friends to give him a lap dance because he was sad about leaving behind his pregnant fiancée to go on the Ibiza trip. Number 5. Piers Sawyer. A man and a woman on an EasyJet plane traveling from Luton, England to the island of Ibiza were caught and exposed by a flight attendant while in the midst of mid-air lovemaking in the plane's bathroom. User Annie Stokes shared footage of the incident on X, and the clip quickly earned nearly 4 million views. It showed the flight attendant swinging the lavatory door open as loud cheers from holidaymakers were heard in the background. The cheering only intensified when a man and a woman were seen inside a state of undress and in a compromising position. Piers Sawyer, the 23-year-old man in the clip, flashed a smile before he quickly closed the door. EasyJet confirmed that he and his partner were handed to the custody of local police when the plane reached its destination and that they were banned from flying with the company. Piers' mother, 51-year-old former model Elaine, spoke to the media in the aftermath and said that she was shocked upon seeing the footage. Yet she defended her son by saying he'd likely gotten caught up in the party atmosphere of the Ibiza-bound plane, adding, "It's embarrassing, but I don't think they were doing anyone any harm." Upon his return from the trip, the Mile High Romeo, as he was dubbed by the press, gave an interview from Elaine's home in Tunbridge Wells, Kent. He revealed that he'd celebrated turning 23 leading up to the incident and that he'd been drinking with his brother and their friends throughout the day. Piers hadn't met the young woman seen with him in the clip prior to boarding and had chatted her up on the plane. He claimed that the idea came up less than an hour into the flight. Regarding the moment when the lavatory's door had swung open, Piers said, "Because I was so out of it, I didn't really care, but later on it hit me." Piers also revealed that he and the woman parted ways at baggage claim and that he would have liked to see her again but hadn't gotten her number. Number 4. Erica Huerta and Stephen Perry. Erica Huerta and Stephen Perry, both in their early 20s, were arrested in June of 2011 following an incident on a beach in Treasure Island, Florida. Huerta and Perry were reported to have been under the influence of alcohol as they started having intimate relations on the beach. They were witnessed by dozens of bystanders, including families with children from a nearby restaurant. The couple had fondled and kissed each other for over half an hour before Perry pulled his shirt over his head and began having intercourse with Huerta. It was then that a witness alerted the police. Huerta of Tallahassee and Perry of Lutz were arrested and taken to Pinellas County Jail. They were each charged with 1 count of lewd and lascivious exhibition. Updates indicated that Perry had secured his $10,000 bond, while Huerta, who was pictured smiling in her processing photo, remained jailed. Number 3. Christina Revels Glick. In late November of 2023, body cam footage of a woman being taken into custody for indecent exposure went viral, earning nearly 3 million views within the first 3 days of its posting. The arrest had occurred at Georgia's Tybee Island beach on July the 1st of 2021. Beachgoer Sarah Moss had called the police after witnessing Christina Revels Glick, who was at the time in her mid-30s, using an adult toy on herself. Moss, who was at the beach with her family, reported that Revels Glick had passed their tent several times before eventually stopping and laying down a towel. She then reportedly pulled the toy out of her backpack and used it on herself while moaning loudly. Moss was reported to have recorded Revels Glick in action, and after about 5 minutes, the latter gathered her things and left the area. Upon being confronted by the police, the woman initially tried to deny the act and asked the police who saw that, thinking that she was being pranked by one of her friends. The police clarified that she'd been seen by a family who'd alerted them. Revels Glick came clean when the police asked to check her bag. The mother of 2 sat and demonstrated what she'd done. She was recorded telling the officers, "Listen, I was sitting on the water like this. I just put it in there." Revels Glick went on to say that she'd climaxed, adding, "I am sorry, I was just stressed out." The woman apologized and started crying while she was being handcuffed, telling the police that she didn't think anyone had seen her. She was booked for indecent exposure and disorderly conduct. Number 2. Daniela Hurst and Craig Smith. On February the 25th of 2016, English couple Daniela Hurst and Craig Smith were out drinking while celebrating the latter's 31st birthday before they took the train to Scarborough, North Yorkshire. Hurst and Smith entered a Domino's pizzeria, and as they waited for their order, engaged in behavior that a magistrate would later describe as lewd, obscene, and disgusting. An 18-minute video captured inside the Domino's showed Hurst straddling a wet floor sign before she jumped into Smith's arms and wrapped her legs around his waist. In full view of Domino's staff, Hurst then slid down Smith's pants and performed an intimate act on him, first standing and then crouching down on her knees. The couple largely did the deed out of the camera's view, but were at one point captured having intercourse against the counter. Hurst had her pants down with her backside exposed, and Smith was recorded pushing himself against her from behind. North Yorkshire police became aware of the incident after a Domino's worker had posted the video on their Twitter. The clip went viral, earning the Bridlington couple infamy across the world, with media outlets running comical headlines about them such as "Deep Thrust Pizza." Hurst and Smith capitalized on their newfound fame by posing for racy bedroom photo shoots and even agreeing to a photo shoot outside the Domino's in question. They reportedly had an affinity for having relations in public, as they'd previously done it on a bus, in a van, on a train, in a swimming pool, and in a field. The Bridlington couple were eventually arrested on charges of outraging public decency. The video was presented in court, and a defense lawyer moved to have the footage thrown out, arguing his clients were in drink and let their exuberant spirits get the better of them, but his request was denied. 30-year-old Hurst pleaded guilty in September of 2017, while Smith was found guilty in absentia as he was on remand on other charges. The couple were handed 12-month community orders, and Smith additionally had to complete 200 hours of unpaid work. Stay tuned, because we've got more They Will Kill You being served right after number 1 with When Porch Pirates Go Wrong. Number 1. Incident in Mielno. In July, of 2022, a couple were recorded having intercourse on a beach in the seaside town of Mielno, Poland, provoking the anger of other beachgoers who witnessed them in the act. The unnamed man was half naked and he persisted in gyrating on top of his partner in spite of audible calls for them to cease their lovemaking. One woman was seen pouring water on them, but the couple remained undeterred until two men approached them and tapped the man on the shoulder. He was visibly intoxicated as he got off his partner and struggled to rise to his feet. Before he got a chance to do so, however, another furious beachgoer approached him from behind and struck him with a flip-flop on his bare bottom. The man then delivered an additional flip-flop strike to the seaside exhibitionist's face, while apparently gesturing for him to go away. The latter, who remained nude in his lower half throughout the viral video, stumbled around in the sand before he made his way through a crowd and climbed some stairs that led away from the beach.
Number 9. Alicia Treat and Brian DeVere. Two porch pirates were arrested after stealing several packages from a home in Bothell, Washington in January of 2018. A female suspect identified as Alicia Treat, aged 37, slipped and injured her ankle during the pair's awkward getaway, which was recorded by the homeowner's security camera. The male accomplice, 39-year-old Brian DeVere, could be seen carrying the injured Treat to their vehicle before returning to grab the 3 packages from the porch. The video recording of Treat's mishap was uploaded to Facebook by the victimized homeowner. The post went viral, garnering more than 650,000 views, with many commenters deeming the woman's fall as karmic justice at work. Treat and DeVere were later tracked down by investigators and arrested at a motel in Everett. The injured woman, who attended her court hearing in a wheelchair, ultimately pleaded guilty to the thefts and was sentenced to nearly 2 months in jail. She was also ordered to pay restitution to the victims, whose stolen packages were reportedly worth more than $5,000 and contained special medication that wouldn't be replaced by insurance. Treat, a mother of 3, was allegedly homeless and on disability at the time of the incident. DeVere had previously faced criminal charges for identity theft, auto theft, and burglary. Number 8. The Stockton Amazon Bandit. On April the 17th of 2018, an unnamed woman was caught stealing an Amazon package from a front porch in Stockton, California. She was subsequently followed and taunted by a witness as she attempted to flee on a bicycle. The thief had brazenly poached a massive cardboard package from a person's porch and then balanced it on her bike's handlebars as she rode away from the scene. A passerby identified as Mark Dunas witnessed the burglary while driving through the neighborhood and proceeded to follow the suspect in his car. Dunas began to hurl verbal barbs at the woman that culminated with threats of involving the police if she didn't return the box to its rightful owner. The thief then hopped off her bicycle and approached the Good Samaritan's car. She shouted an expletive-laden retort at the man before abandoning the package on the side of the road and leaving empty-handed. The entire exchange was recorded on Dunas's cell phone and was widely shared on social media in the incident's aftermath. Number 7. Marvin Marshall. A would-be porch pirate was caught in the act of trying to steal a package from a house in Moncks Corner, South Carolina on January the 17th of 2020. He was consequently held at gunpoint by the homeowner until the arrival of local sheriff's deputies. At the time, Marvin Marshall was reportedly driving around the neighborhood near War Admiral Lane looking for work. He later told the police that he'd been searching for lawns to mow when his car suddenly broke down. Marshall exited his vehicle, approached the victim's house and knocked on the front door. When there was no answer, the suspect grabbed a package that was sitting on the ground near the door and began to walk back to his car. The homeowner then came outside and pointed a firearm at the thief, demanding he return the stolen parcel. Marshall complied with the armed man's instructions and remained at gunpoint until police officers arrived at the scene and took him into custody, after which he was charged with petty larceny. Number 6. The failed getaway in Mississauga. A man was arrested for stealing a package from the porch of a resident of Ontario, Canada, in January of 2021. He was caught by members of law enforcement after his getaway vehicle got stuck in a snowbank during his attempted escape
At approximately 2:40 p.m. on January the 4th, the unidentified 33-year-old suspect approached a house near Churchill Meadows and Erin Center Boulevard in the city of Mississauga. He proceeded to pick up a package that had been left outside the home's front door. As he attempted to make off with the stolen item, the homeowner emerged from the residence and started berating the man for his theft. The suspect then fled back to his vehicle and started to back out of the driveway, but his efforts to escape were derailed by a pile of snow on which his car got stuck. The entire incident was captured by the homeowner on his cell phone. Adding to the situation's hilarity was him actually trying to help the porch pirate from a distance by explaining that the car was front-wheel drive and that he needed to get the wheels, which were spinning in the air, on the ground. Unable to drive away, the thief remained inside of his vehicle until the arrival of the police, at which point he was taken into custody. The video recording went viral after being uploaded to Reddit. The pirate, who was reportedly a resident of Brampton, was ultimately charged with 1 count of fraud under $5,000 and 1 count of theft under $5,000. Number 5. The Glendale Pirate. A Glendale woman shamed a porch pirate into returning the package he'd stolen after witnessing the theft from her front yard on December the 18th of 2019. According to reports from local media, Shannon Brandon was eating breakfast with her son, Derek, in front of their home when they observed a pair of men as they exited a parked vehicle and walked towards 2 separate houses. Brandon's son noticed that one of the men had taken a package from someone's front porch and told his mother about it. She then ran after the suspect and yelled at him to put the stolen item back. The thief complied with the incensed woman's commands, and the 2 would-be porch pirates subsequently returned to their car and left the neighborhood. Brandon later told a local news station that she felt compelled to confront the burglars because, with the winter holidays approaching, the package could have contained someone's Christmas presents. Her neighbors revealed that there were only 2 pillows inside the box that she'd successfully prevented from being stolen. Number 4. Kelly Russell. A Dallas thief was caught by surveillance cameras stealing $5,000 worth of packages from her neighbors' front porches. The woman was identified as 33-year-old Kelly Russell, a self-described model and bartender who'd been accused of pilfering parcels from other residents of the apartment complex where she lived. On January 11th of 2018, Russell was arrested in Oak Cliff in connection to unrelated traffic offenses, which included driving without a license. She was released from custody the following day, but surrendered herself to the authorities less than a week later and confessed to being the suspected porch pirate. Her thefts had been captured on video, with multiple clips circulating online in the weeks leading up to her arrest. The authorities conducted a search of Russell's apartment and found stolen packages in such a large number that they needed 2 police cruisers to transport them in their entirety. Russell faced felony theft charges that carried a maximum sentence of up to 2 years in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. After entering a guilty plea, the porch pirate ultimately received 2 years of deferred adjudication probation. Number 3. The Edmonton Sting Operation. A woman was placed under arrest by undercover police officers mere seconds after stealing a package from a front porch in Edmonton, Canada. The entire incident, which took place on February the 21st of 2020, was captured by a doorbell security camera. The unidentified female suspect went to the front door of a residence in the capital city of the Alberta province. She wore a mask, a baseball cap, and carried a backpack. After grabbing a brown package that had been placed on the front stoop, the woman began to calmly walk away with the stolen item in hand. Before she'd even reached the end of the street, however, 2 unmarked police trucks pulled up on either side of her, and she was quickly surrounded by plainclothes officers. The thief was ordered to drop to her knees as a 3rd police vehicle arrived at the scene. The dramatic arrest was reportedly part of a sting operation conducted by Edmonton police in an effort to crack down on porch pirates in the area. Number 2. Ryan Paulet. In July of 2019, a Las Vegas man was remanded into police custody after carrying out a porch pirate theft in the Northwest Valley. The suspect, 21-year-old Ryan Paulier reportedly stole a package containing more than $4,000 worth of surveillance equipment from a victim's doorstep. In a rather ironic turn of events, the man was ultimately identified with the help of footage taken from surveillance cameras that had captured the entire incident. While he committed the theft, Paulier wore an Oakland Raiders baseball cap and a black mask that concealed his face. Detectives from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department were able to positively identify him due to the distinctive tattoos on his neck and legs. After receiving 2 petty larceny calls on the day of the theft, local authorities were able to rapidly track down Paulier and place him under arrest. In November of 2021, there were reports that a Las Vegas resident named Ryan Paulier was murdered during an altercation with his ex-girlfriend's husband, Michael Daniels, aged 32. Paulier allegedly crashed into a wall after his motorcycle was intentionally struck by Daniels' pickup truck. The deceased had reportedly been involved in a battery domestic violence incident with Daniels' wife the day before the fatal crash. Number 1. Cortez Brown. In October of 2019, the victim of an assault and robbery was arrested after being identified as a suspect in a series of porch pirate thefts. Cortez Brown worked as a delivery driver at a Pizza Hut near Atlanta, Georgia. Brown allegedly used his pizza delivery bag to steal packages from various houses in the residential district of Buckhead and had reportedly been caught on multiple home security cameras carrying out the thefts. On the night of October the 5th, Brown was sent to an address in northwest Atlanta to deliver a pizza. When he arrived at the home, however, the delivery driver was ambushed by 2 armed men. One suspect struck Brown in the head with a handgun, while the other took the $200 in cash that was in his wallet. The 2 robbers fled the scene, even taking the box of pizza with them. Brown contacted the authorities and was able to receive medical treatment for his wounds. While recording Brown's official statement about the assault, an Atlanta police officer recognized the man's blue PT Cruiser as the same vehicle that had been used by the Buckhead porch pirate. Brown was subsequently taken into police custody and charged in connection to the string of thefts.
Thanks for watching. If you could prank any celebrity Ashton Kutcher style, who would you pick and why? Let us know in the comments section below.